Hi, I'm Luke Serveld. Welcome to another episode of Meet the Gaffer. Today, we've got an opportunity to talk to a key grip. So, it's not a Gaffer episode. We're talking to Joe Allen, and he's a key grip in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I've heard rumors that he's writing a book. So, hi Joe, how you doing?
Hi Luke, how are you? Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, kind of crazy times, but hey, this is an opportunity for us to spend some time talking to folks that we haven't seen in a while. You know, we've worked together a number of times, but not that often. And so it's kind of fun to get to know a little bit about, where you've been, what you've done, and now the fact that you're going to share that with other people. That's pretty cool. There's a lot of folks that are hanging at home these days, and they've got time to think about their futures. And you're going to be helping them with that by talking about sort of your progression in your career. Where did the idea for this book come from?
Well, the book idea began a number of years ago. I've always been the type of guy on a movie set that I gravitate towards meeting people. I love meeting people. I love talking to people. It's always been one of the other major enjoyable parts about being in the business.
Totally.
So you meet all these people from all over the world that come together on a project, and when they finish the project, you've got a bunch of new friends. The other thing was, on a set, I would always try to meet the new kids. I would always ask them, how did you get started? And then I would just zip it and listen to their story. I found that there was no two people you could ask that question to that would ever give you the same answer. And it was always going to be a fascinating answer as to what their journey was that led them to that particular moment where you were working with them. There was always some speed bumps that they encountered along the way, or that they were still encountering along the way. And so I would listen to that, and I would try to help them out in some fashion to make it a little bit easier for them. That was a feel-good thing for me. I was helped early on in my career by a number of people, and I never forgot that. And I've always been someone that wanted to give back in some fashion. And so after enough times of doing this, and also having people come back to me and say, thank you for the tips that you gave me, they allowed me to do this, this, and this. And
Yep.
That made me feel even better. This book idea started to develop from that.
Yeah, and so in a sense, you've been doing this for what? How many years?
25 plus years.
Yeah, in a sense, you've been writing this book for, 10, 15 years, which is kind of cool. And it's sort of like when teachers have students come back and say, hey, I remember fifth grade and how you taught me this and your encouragement or whatever it was. And so you can be that for people on set. That's awesome.
Yeah.
What initially drew you to the business?
Movies have always had a special place in my heart ever since I was a little kid. I grew up watching Westerns, specifically with my folks and my brother, and those were just a great escape for me, along with many other movies that I watched growing up. And that passion has never left. And when I got into the business, that passion only grew more intense. I began at the very bottom at a studio, a non-union studio in South San Francisco. And I started to work my way up very quickly from position to position to position through just hard work, grit, and determination. I wasn't making a lot of money because it was a non-union studio. I had no experience when I began in the business. I was 28 years old when I started, a little bit late, but no big deal. I had experience from other careers, but not in the movie industry. So I had to start at the bottom. That was my only way in. And so just with a good attitude and giving 110%, I started to ascend up the ladder to a position that I wanted to get at, which was at the time a camera position. So that's what I started to target, and eventually got there. And then all of a sudden that studio, the executives from ABC in Los Angeles flew up and said, we have decided to shut the show down. Thank you very much. You guys are done. After a year of working there and making all this progress and learning all these things, is instantly I was out of work. So that was a little bit of a panic on the radar. But I spent about a month hitting the streets, reaching out to contacts, people that I had met, saying, look, I'm available if any projects come up. And inevitably, I got a phone call that led to my first independent movie as a grip. And so I ended up doing that particular movie and had a great time, laughed a lot, learned a lot, gave my resume, which is something almost unheard of. Nobody has a resume in this business, but I was coming from other sides of work, and so I gave my resume to the cameraman and said, if you ever need help, please feel free to give me a call. So a month later, I got a call from the Union of San Francisco Motion Picture Union saying that they had got my resume and would I like to go to work on a particular feature film filming up in Glen Ellen. And so they told me all about the movie, all about what I would be making, the position. I was thrilled to death. And so that began my 25 plus year journey in the business. So that passion for watching films as a young boy and then getting onto an actual big feature film set was unbelievable. Being around the excitement of all the people working on this particular project and then starting to learn this craft, and my enjoyment of the business is really never left. It's been a wonderful journey for me, and ultimately I've realized that I have so much knowledge now that I'd like to just give back to people starting out in the business. And I think it's not just people starting out in the business, it's also people that have been in the business a number of years. And I think there's just always opportunity to learn. That's the fascinating part to me, is that every job I go on, doesn't even after 25 plus years, I always kind of visually pick out what I think is the most talented person in a particular department, and I watch them. I watch them throughout the whole day, because ultimately for me, there's something that you can pick up from the way that they talk to people, the way that they talk to their crew, the way that they do their particular craft. They've risen up the ranks for a particular reason. They're really good at what they do. And I think that's the fascinating part about life, is that there's always that opportunity to learn, even if it's the same thing you've done 1,000 times. You might learn to do it a little bit cleaner, faster, and more efficiently 1,001 times. So
Totally. It's kind of interesting you mentioned that, because you can learn the craft, but you also have to be sort of a student of people, because a lot of this business is not just what you know, it's who you know and how you work with people. So I think that's a great point. Have you been in other parts of the country for work, or has it mostly been in San Francisco?
25 years plus has always been out of the San Francisco Bay Area. I have done projects out of state, but 99% of my work has been out of the Bay Area. And I've had opportunities to go to Los Angeles. I went to school in Los Angeles at UCLA, and I thought for a portion of time that my work would have me be down there working. However, once I became entrenched in working up in the Bay Area, I just stayed here.
Yeah.
And I have family here. I didn't want to leave my family,
Right.
being around my family.
And being in San Francisco, was there enough work?
Yes. For me, I was part of Local 16, that particular union. And so what was interesting about making films up here, whether it's feature films, television, or commercials, for me, what I found to be the trick that kept me going is in the slow times was that I was part of the union. And so if it ever got slow, I would call in available to the union hall, and I would go do other types of work that they had available until other films started coming back in again, and then I would be working on particular projects.
did you have an opportunity, because San Francisco is kind of a cosmopolitan city? I'm wondering about like foreign productions or, people from other countries. I imagine you've had some experience with that.
One of the greatest things I think that is part of this industry is that you have people that come together from all over the world for a particular project, and you have this instant group of friends that you meet. They come together to make this visual art and have an impact on people watching it ultimately once it's done and it's out to the world. But yes, you get an international flavor of whether it's a DP from Europe or crews coming in from Los Angeles. You're working with people from all walks of life. And so you've got to learn how to work together with different personalities, different ethnicities, different languages, and different work ethics. At the end of it, you end up learning a tremendous amount about different types of people and the way they work and how they visually want something to look and to make that happen.
And so in your book, you writing from a perspective in San Francisco is still totally relevant worldwide because the language is basically the same, right? I mean,
yeah, I think ultimately the rhythm of making movies is the same as a technician globally. The information that people will get from my book that are interested in getting into the business can be applied anywhere in the world. The book is designed for people that are interested in making movies, that really have no idea how the business works. It's tried and true tips and advice coming from years of experience on a way to just come a little more cleanly into the business, try to get over the main hurdles that a lot of people struggle with when they do come into the business for years sometimes, and to try and give them some better advice on some paths that would make it easier for them as they try and begin their journey in the business.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic because, that's sort of like the thing that you might get some tips in film school, you might get some tips online, but getting some of that information universal on the one hand, but really detailed on the other hand, I think that's a wonderful gift that you're providing. One thing that's always interesting to me is, now you talked about your choice to stay in San Francisco. You had family here, that kind of thing. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the interconnection between your work life and your personal life or your family life, if you choose to go that way?
Yeah, this is something actually I talk about all the time with pretty much everybody that I know in the business, because I think it's just such an important aspect that should never be ignored, the work-life balance. As a freelancer in the movie business, as you get more and more entrenched into your career, the hours are long, and they're the equivalent of what a doctor or lawyer hours would probably look like, somewhere between 10, sometimes up to 20-hour days. Hopefully those don't happen to you all the time, but they do exist, they do happen. And then beyond that, it's not just a 9-to-5 job 5 days a week. Oftentimes on particular movies or shows, it can go from anywhere from 5, 6, 7-day weeks, or just even longer durations of time, 15 days straight. It's really important that as an individual in the business and a freelancer is that you take the time and not forget about balance. And by balance is that when you finish a particular project, that you take the time and you go do the things that make you happy, whatever that is. Spending time with your kids, getting out into nature, reading a book, taking a road trip, whatever it is, to balance yourself out from working these long hours that are not the norm for most people. So it's really important.
I think what you're doing is great. I think it's going to be really helpful for people. on a sort of a different note, I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your publishing journey. What's that been like?
Well, it's still really in its beginning stages. I think for a lot of writers, they have the idea, they write the book, and then they really struggle with trying to get it out there, to find the right form to get it out there, whether that's online publishing or the traditional way of just trying to find a publisher that will publish the book. It's not as easy as it sounds. I have a friend of mine that she's in the business with me too. She had a concept she had sitting there for 20 years, and she found Publishizer, and they helped her to get her book off the ground and get it published. When that happened for her, it really piqued my interest, and I really wanted to get as much information from her as to how that process worked for her, what they did for her, and ultimately I got enough information that I began my own publishing campaign on Publishizer, and that is a live campaign right now. That's a 30-day campaign. It's in the pre-order phase at this point, meaning that you can go onto the campaign page, you can read about my story on there, you can watch my video on there, and then if you feel like this is something that could help you out, you can pre-order the book over in the bonus section on the right, and at the end of the 30-day campaign, that's when I will be discussing with different publishers on and pick a particular publisher, and then we start working through the publishing process, and I will finish writing the book, and then the book will be published.
Cool. But you're already writing a book.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. That's awesome. So it's sort of like a Kickstarter for publishing.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
Yeah. Right on. Thanks, Joe. Thanks for, telling us a little bit about your journey, about this book coming up. And I'm excited.
Yes, thank you, Luke. I appreciate you having me out. I appreciate anyone who's watching this and their support for this. I'm very grateful for it. So thank you.
Good deal. Well, thanks for watching. We'll see you again next time. I got one last question for you, and that is, sometimes I get asked, hey man, I don't really work with crews that often. It's usually one-man band, or it's me and a sound person, whatever, or me and an assistant. If I get on a crew where I have an actual gaffer and a key grip, is there a special way for me to communicate or get my points across, or I don't want to offend them, or can you talk a little bit about that?
I think that's an important question to answer. One thing I will always say about anyone that I'm working with for the first time is I always just try to be as humble and as genuine and as nice as I can be to someone that I'm working with for the first time, to really just try and find out how they want to, specifically I'm talking about a DP, is I want to see how they work, what it is that they would like to get done, and then we just do it. I work with the gaffer and we just get it done. But you're never going to get away from the fact that it's a people world, and that you have to have the ability to communicate with people to get what you want and for them to get what they want. And so the best way to do that is just to be nice, to be a good person, be genuine. There's no reason why anyone should have an ego on any given movie set, because really you're there to do a job. And for some people, on some particular projects, these are projects that they are putting their own money into. And so they've got their heart, their soul, blood, sweat, and tears into it. So really, you want to give them the best version of you that you can. and your whole crew. And so I think it's just, you're never going to get away, like I said, from the fact that it's a people world, and you just really want to always try to be nice and get along with everybody. And it just makes everybody has a lot more fun that way. The other thing is that you should always have the ability to feel comfortable asking questions with people that you don't know, which ultimately is on almost every job that you're on. Always, 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 if there's confusion or you have questions, ask the question to get the answer that you need to do the job the right way.
Safely.
Safely, right. Safely is a big component, obviously, but also having the right answers to get the work done efficiently is key.